Good morning. I think today is the 5th or the 6th of January, and I'm doing the lesson called Boots on the Ground. And I did this because you hear alarming rhetoric or verbiage coming from Macron, Starmer, and Zelensky concerning putting boots on the ground in Ukraine, foreign boots. And some people that are hyping the Ukraine situation up while Donald Trump is desperately trying to pull us out of this war. We got an element in this society that is pushing for our American involvement and the European Union's involvement. But I want to show you in this lesson, the only people that are going to suffer are going to be poor people. And we're going to start this lesson off by uh, in order to understand the mental state of this the European Union or the Europeans, you have to go backwards in time and take a look at their fathers. Uh, when the Anglo-Saxons were in their barbarous state, they were barbarians. This is a historical known fact. They teach it in their history books. So I don't mean it in a negative sense. I just mean I'm using the word barbarian as an adjective to describe a people that didn't possess an alphabet at one time. And so the Roman Caesar Hadrian built the wall in 122 AD to keep the Anglo-Saxon barbarians out of Britain. The original name of England was Britain. And so when the barbarians or the Anglo-Saxons overran Britain, they began to call it England or England. But I'm going to read you something. I'd like to read you something from this book right here. I don't know if it's showing up on your screen, but I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna do a double take on it. This book right here is called Our Earliest Ancestors in Britain. It was written, well, actually, it was written in an essay form or lecture form by Professor William Boyd Dawkins. And in this essay, Boyd Dawkins he gives insight into the mindset of his fathers. And so on page 96 and 97 of this book, or this essay, Professor Boyd Dawkins is going to illuminate us. He's going to tell us what type of people these were that invaded Britain, and he's going to give you the year. So it says right here, and I'm gonna enlarge this just a little bit for those of you who are serious about history. It says, and I'm gonna use my cursor. What was the form of the Anglo-Saxons language? When about 450 AD, they entered Britain. See, so in 450 AD, England was called Britain. And there's a reason for that, because Brit is the Aramaic Hebrew word for covenant. These were the people of the covenant. And we find historically they were there before Julius Caesar showed up in 55 BC. It says, no one knows the answer. They seem to have been a people without learning and without an alphabet. This is what makes you a barbarian. If you don't have an alphabet, you can't what? You cannot record your history. Their speech always being cursory and extemporaneous. I always have a problem with this word, extemporaneous. Must have been artless and without any modes of transition or involution cause. You know, a transition words, and, but, when, which, or. That's when you learn a language, the first thing you learn is transition words, so you can hold a conversation. It says, with abruptness and in connection can be seen in their earlier writings. This barbarity seemingly continued during their wars with the Britons. The wars left them no room for study. So from 450 AD, it says, I'm going to pick it up right here. It says, this continued to 570 AD. So we'll round that off. From 450 AD to 600 AD, they didn't have a vehicle of communication, because they had zero, they didn't have an alphabet. So it says, now watch this. It says, in 570 AD until Augustine came from Rome to convert them to Christianity. After 300 years, that's roughly 900 AD, from 570 AD, you see it right here, to 900 AD, I rounded it off. The Anglo-Saxons learned enough to express themselves like a civilized people. Now, this means what? This means that the Europeans have only been speaking a known language, what they call English and Italian and French and Lithuanian and Croatian, all these different languages, and I would have to even say Russian. But the Russians are Slavs; they're not Anglo-Saxons. But they've only been speaking the language for 1,000 years. I want you to feel the impact of that. 1,000 years they've been speaking the language. So they were called barbarians, not by me, but by Professor Boyd Dawkins, who gave this lecture around, I think it was 1879. I want to go to another, I want to go to another, I want to pull up some more, I want to pull up another document for you. I'm missing something. Now, we got that in, right? So now what I like to do is, I like to take you down to show you. I want to read this. I hope I didn't delete it. I want to read what Professor Boyd Dawkins said about this people. I'm going to go back here, and I want to pick this up over here and show you that Professor Boyd Dawkins was the one that explained to us what type of people these were. So we're going to go back to Professor Boyd Dawkins' essay or his writings, our earliest ancestors in Britain, and we're going to read this so you can see that I'm not making this up, and it's actually profound. So let me see if I can grab that. Our earliest, and here it is right here. Our earliest ancestors. Now check this out. This is what the book says. Now this is, I want to go back up here just so you can see the title of the book. Here it is, Our Earliest Ancestors in Britain. I'm going to pick it up at page, and it says Professor Boyd Dawkins. Look at the price. It was only a penny. But even though this essay only cost a penny, or this lecture that was recorded, it's one of the most profound writings that comes to us from 1800. Now I'm going to start reading the bottom. I want to make sure we're on that page as a unit. I'm going to start reading the bottom of page 96. The people whom these English displaced. I want to make sure that we get we only focus on that. The people whom these English displaced were saturated with Roman civilization. They boasted that they were citizens of the Roman Empire, civis Romani. During that long war of invasion by which our ancestors displaced the people who had preceded them in this country. We hear of great outcries as to the ruthless nature of this invasion. Our ancestors were not men of peace in any sense. They were men of war. And they burned and destroyed everything that was Roman, everything that was British, everything that was termed Welsh. For the term Welsh, we owe to them. They destroyed the civilization utterly by fire and sword. So the eyewitness account was that these barbarians, the Anglo-Saxons, they were a ruthless people, and they did not understand the concept of peace. All they ever did was make war. And hence, this was the reason why Hadrian Caesar built the wall to keep them out. But that wall only kept the Anglo-Saxons out of England or Britain for like 300 years. He built the wall in 122. It took 6 years to build. They came across that wall in 449, and they've been making war ever since. So the idea of my introduction was to show you this is the mind of the Anglo-Saxons. This is the mind of the Europeans. We'll show you a thing. World War One. I would like to go back and look at the data on World War One. I'm going to show you. This is disconcerting, and it's alarming. Let me see. I think this is it right here. Check this out, y'all. Here it is right here. This is the data on World War One. Just a little bit. Get this out the way. Check this out. World War One started in Europe. World War One started in Europe among the Anglo-Saxons. It is estimated that 24 million people died. World War Two started in Europe. Estimated that 15 to 25 million people died. But there's a Bible prophecy concerning World War III. This is the war that the big nose Macron and Starmer, a big nose Macron from France and Starmer from Britain, and these other crazed governments in the European Union that they want to start. So they want you to back World War III. But I'm going to show you, according to the Bible, this is the only source that we have that could project into the future to show us the heart of this man, his mind. The Bible's going to show you that the European Union is going to fall to Russia, but that when World War III starts, 2.6 billion people are going to die. I want you to hear this number again, 2.6 billion people. And I'm going to read that first. I had Daniel set up to go first, but I changed my mind because I want you to understand the magnitude of what these people are trying to tell you to back. They want you to back this, but they don't tell you. A, they didn't tell you about the numbers from World War One and World War Two. And two, they don't have nobody to teach you prophecy, what the Lord had written. The Bible says, I think it's in the book of Revelations where we are, the first chapter and first verse, it says, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified by his angel unto his servant John. So this thing, the book of Revelation was to give us, the church, insight into the future. And I'm going to read you something that this angel told John out of the 9th chapter of Revelations. And the 5th angel sounded, Revelations 9:1. And the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. Oh, this is what the earth is. It's a bottomless pit. Why is it called a bottomless pit? Because no matter how many people die, somebody else is being born. It's bottomless. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. I don't want to read all that. I want to get you down to the numbers. It says, and they, in this pit, verse 11, they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit. Well, the angel of the bottomless pit was the angel that was kicked out of heaven, Lucifer, the morning star. So that's why when it was declared that he was the God of this world, that fallen angel. It says, and they had a king over them, verse 11. Revelation is the 9th chapter and the 11th verse. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon. The mere fact that the scribe used the word Abaddon shows you that the Hebrew tongue was what? Was Aramaic. Abaddon is an Aramaic word, not modern Hebrew. It is an ancient Aramaic term. It means destroyer, or somebody that captures other people, the capturer. But in this sense, is meant as the destroyer. This was the angel that went through Egypt. Go back and read the book of Exodus. The Lord told Moshe, he said, listen, put the blood over your doorpost, and I will not suffer the destroyer to come in unto you. Who is the destroyer? Abaddon. If you go back and read I think the Latin Vulgate, which was written almost 2,000 years before the King James Bible was ever printed or written, it mentions three. It says the Hebrew word is Abaddon. The Greek word was Apollos or Apollyon, which is really Apollos, the sun god, and the Latin word was destroyer. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Tinsdale Bible mentions the three also. But this Bible right here, the King James Version, only mentions two. It doesn't give the Latin name. So I read it anyway. I read it again. Verse 11, Revelations 9 and 11. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue has his name Apollyon. If you just take that O off, the O and the N off, and you get what? The N off, you get Apollos. Who was Apollos? He was the sun god. What day was he worshipped on? He was worshipped on the day called Sudiag. What is Sudiag in modern English? Sunday. So this was that God, and this was the day that he was worshiped, right? But I don't want to read all that. I want to skip down to verse 13. And the sixth, Sheesh, in Hebrew, Sheesh Malaki, and the sixth angel sounded. And I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God. Verse 14, saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, loose the four angels, which are bound in the great river Euphrates. Verse 15, and the four angels were loose, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men. He says, and the four angels, Arbia, Malaki, the four angels, were loose, which were prepared for an hour, a day, Yom, a month, Hakadash, Hadash, in a year, Shan, for to slay the third part of men, third, Shalish, is that Shalishi, third part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them. There's only one army on the planet that could put 2 million soldiers, 200 million soldiers on the battlefield. That would be the king of the East. That would be China. But remember, China is confederate with who? With the big fella in the north, Russia. So Russia, China, North Korea, and their Arabian and African allies, they're going to get together. This is the confederacy. The king of the north is Russia. The king of the east is China, but they have a covenant to defend together. And another king of the east, a minor king, is North Korea. You can see that the North Korea sent soldiers down to help the Russians fight against the Ukrainians. This is fact, y'all. So here come these kings. They coming across the Euphrates River. Now watch how many people died. I want to go down to verse 18. By these three was the third part of men killed by the fire, by the smoke, the brimstone, which issued out of their mouths. This is John, a primitive man seeing jets, helicopters, airplanes, tanks. So he's trying to use the creation to describe what he's seeing. But I want you to focus on the number. A third part of the men died. But what's the third part? It's estimated there are 8 billion people on the planet. What is a third of 8? A third of 8 is 2.6 billion people, according to the Ruach, Malna Alhim, according to the Spirit of God. Okay, Malaki, the angel, 2.6 billion people going to die in the future. World War III is going to produce anywhere from 2.6 to 3 billion deaths. See, because these people in these nations, they live based on what they see, and because they don't have prophets to interpret the word of God correctly, because the book says the scriptures are of no private interpretation, but the holy men of God wrote as they were moved by the Holy Ghost or the Holy Spirit. This thing has been hidden from them. But they got you hand clapping on the sideline for Zelensky and the Ukrainians and the European Union. This is what the European Union is getting ready to push you. Big nose Macron, you all have to resist him. Resist big nose Macron. He's sitting over there with 300 nuclear weapons. The Russians are sitting over there with 7,000 nuclear weapons. This man has lost, he's deranged. He is just as deranged as Zelensky is. But I want to continue in this because I want to show you the madness of the Europeans. You know, like the European Union, that's all you're hearing in the news lately. EU, the EU, the EU. Let me tell you something. According to the Bible, the EU is going to fall. We're going to show you this in two places. The European Union, and I'm going to say this to you, and I hope that the administration, the United States administration sees this video and that they invite me to the White House and let me open up their understanding to show the scriptures to them, because I'm telling you, distance yourself from the EU. They are going to fall. There's a second thing. According to the scriptures, the European Union is going to attack Russia first, but they're gonna fall. They're not gonna make it. I'm not gonna read all that to you, but I want to show you something that Daniel the prophet, who lived 2,600 years ago, wrote concerning the 10 toes. You know, the European Union, they call themselves the 10. You said, no, I got you now. There's 27. No, there's 27 governments, but there's only 10 permanent members. The other 17 are observer states. And the 10 permanent members called themselves the 10. Let's go to Daniel, I think it's the 2nd chapter. And you got to excuse me, I don't have any notes on this. I'm doing this. I like to do lessons without like looking like I'm reading from a script. You know what I mean? So you can get, so it's heartfelt. It's coming from my heart, not a script. But in Daniel, we're not going to read all this. You have to do some research on your own. My job is to lead you to the trough, show you where the water is, and then you go drink. Daniel, the 2nd chapter, in verse 31. Now, this King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, and Daniel's going to interpret the dream. You have to read the first 31, 30 verses on your own in this 2nd chapter. But he says, thou, O king, sawest and beheld a great image, whose brightness and excellence stood before thee. Verse 32, this image hid was of fine gold, his breast and arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon the feet, that were of iron, clay, and break them in pieces. So the feet, there's 10 toes on your feet. If you don't believe me, pull your socks off, count your toes right now. On your right foot, you should have 5 toes. On your left foot, you should have another 5 toes. That is 10 toes. Unless you was in the days of David. Then one of the giants said, I think he had 6 fingers on each hand and he might have had 6 toes. You can quote me on that. Anyway, I'm going to skip down to verse 35. It says, then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, the gold broken to pieces together and became like the chaff or the shaft of the summer threshing floor. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. So remember, you say, well, why did the stone smite the image on the feet? Because the head was Babylon. It had passed off into history. The belly and the thighs and all that other stuff was probably Medo-Persia. The legs might have been Greece. It might have been Greece. The only thing that was left from the statue, that golden statue, was the 10 toes, because all these other nations had passed on in time. Well, the 10 toes is who? The 10 toes is right here on your TV set every day, in your newspapers, on the internet, is the European common market. And I'm going to show you something about them. These 10 toes take on a different form in the book of Revelations. They go from being 10 toes to 10 horns in the 17th chapter of Revelation. Why is horns? Horns is an ancient word from ancient Sumeria. Horns represents power, and it also represents power, and it represents government. These are ancient words that are being used, but because because our teachers don't understand the verbiage from antiquity, They don't understand that this angel is using ancient terminology to describe something that's going to happen or that is currently happening in our generation. Now watch this. Revelation 17:1. And there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials and talked with me, saying, Unto me, come hither. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. This is a prostitute or a female. It also represents a church. And the many waters is nation, tongues, and people. And the reason why this woman is called a whore is because she's masquerading as the bride. She is not the bride, but she's telling everybody that she's the bride. I don't want to get into that. And we'll do that lesson at another time. And I don't want to insult. The lesson is not designed to insult anybody. We just want to inform you all of what's going on. And I'm going to say it again. Do not listen to Big Nose Macron of France. Now check this out. It says, verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Oh, the 10 horns. Now, the 7 heads is really 7 mountains on which this woman sits. And there's only one church that sits on 7 mountains, and that church is what? That's the Vatican. But who are these 10 horns? Well, let's go look at verse 9. First, I want to read verse 9 to you so you'll see that I'm not imagining this or delusional. And here's the mind which, at Revelation 17:9, and here's the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sit. Only one church sits on 7 mountains, church, and that's the Vatican. I'm going to skip down to verse 12. And the 10 horns, which is what? The European Union. The 10 horns were previously, 2,600 years ago, these 10 horns were the 10 toes. But remember, the 10 toes were destroyed by a stone that hit them on the foot. And we're going to show you. That stone is the stone that the builders refused. The stone that they refuse has come to hit the chief cornerstone, the head of the building. That is Yeshua / Jesus. Check it out. Verse 12, Revelation 17:12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no power as of yet. Because in John's days, these nations, they didn't have that power yet. But received power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. They shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. What is this telling you? This is the European Union, y'all. In their madness, they're going to try to fight against the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. The European Union is going to fall, but the Lord is not going, they're going to fall. The Lord's going to use, and I know some of you all are not going to like this, but my job is not to be liked. My job is to tell you the amut, the truth. And the truth of the matter is, Russia is going to destroy the European Union. It is utter madness for the EU. They only have about 500 nuclear weapons, max, if they got 500. Russia got 7,000. Russia's been preparing for this probably for the last 20, 30 years. Who knows? But they are ready for these people. And Macron is whipping the people into a frenzy. You know, we're looking at a situation in Europe where the parasite is the European Union and the host is America. So the parasite is having a problem now because the host has said, hey, I'm not carrying you no more. You need to carry yourself. So now the parasite is freaking out. And it appears that the logic or the theory behind the moves of Big Nose Macron and a non-confident looking Starmer and Brother Zelensky looks like he don't even look like himself since he took office. When he first took office as a comedian, he was well groomed. He had he was personable. You look at a picture of him now, it looks almost like it's another person. Like it might not even be the original Zelensky. Time will tell. So as I take a deep breath, these 10 toes ain't gonna make it. But I will tell you this, and I'll defend these scriptures against all these so-called theologians that are out there. This is a warning to Russia. The West is going, the 10 toes the European Union, according to the scriptures, they are going to attack you. But I will show you that Russia is considered Gog and Magog, and Russia is going to be around until Judgment Day. So if Russia's going to be around, the EU is going to be gone. Russia's going to survive. This is according to prophecy. But I want to show you something. I want to show you the mindset. I want to show you the mindset of these people that are beating the drums for war. And I have a couple of videos I'm gonna play. So first, let's go and look at Macron to see what Macron is talking about, because you're gonna find a common theme in all of these guys that are talking, and that common theme is gonna be war. Let me see if I could pull it up here. I need to do this first. I need to get rid of it. No, I'm leave that there for now. Let me see. I want to pull this video. That's last Zelensky. Let's do big head Macron. That big nose. I like to call him big nose Macron. Zelensky, Martin Luther. Boots on the ground. Let's go with this guy. Let's go boots on the ground. I'm gonna go and share my screen. And I'm working with what the Lord has given me. Check this out. I want y'all to hear what he has to say. Now, this is Macron talking about putting boots on the ground in Ukraine.
Accepting, this has been roundly denounced by, almost all NATO allies, including in the last hour, the United States. Was this a gaffe?
No, it was not a gaffe. I think, first of all, President Macron didn't say that he was going to send troops in Ukraine. He said that everything should be on the table in a way to 2 years after this war started, to show our opponent, Vladimir Putin, that we're ready to get into any kind of reaction if they are attacking Ukraine more and stronger.
You see, first they say, first he starts off by saying he did not say that there would be boots on the ground. Now he's saying, dude's contradicting himself. Now he's saying, hey, we will use all means necessary if you continue to attack Ukraine. No, what you need to do is you need to step aside and get out of it.
I think it's very important. As you mentioned, President Macron was the first to have a very diplomatic approach with Putin.
Russia to have this capacity. So we are a special nation, and it's 101 lesson in nuclear warfare. You don't go with your troops in the contact with other troops of a country.
So I don't even, watch all this, because this is one of them skinheads talking, and if you listen to him long enough, he's going to start talking about the 300 nuclear weapons that they have in context, that they could actually challenge a superpower with 7,000 nuclear warheads. But I want y'all to think for a second. These guys are talking about boots on the ground. Who you think the boots are going to be? You think it's going to be the elite or the rich sons? It's going to be poor people, man. It's going to be poor people. The same poor people that are dying in Ukraine, those the boots on the ground. They're killing off the poor in Ukraine, and everybody's sitting over here trying to talking about Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is all he's saying is we want peace. Donald Trump is trying to save the so-called Negro, the so-called poor white in this country from going to a war in a different land to die. I'm gonna show you this. Let's go see what Starmer got to say. Let me see if we got another video. The British Prime Minister. That's his name, Starmer. Let's see what he has to say from the United Kingdom. And this guy really, his body language is not good. He looks like he's terrified to make the announcement that he's about to make, but check this out.
We will go further to develop a coalition of the willing to defend a deal in Ukraine and to guarantee the peace. Not every nation will feel able to contribute, but that can't mean that we sit back. Instead, those willing will intensify planning now with real urgency. The UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air.
Y'all hear that? The United Kingdom, all they got is, I think, 25 to maybe 50 tanks making comments, blanket comments, that they're willing to put boots on the ground and planes in the air. I could have continued to play that video of Big Nose Macron of France and the skinheads that he got making this announcement about their little nuclear subs, like Russia is not ready for that. So what I'm simply saying to you is, this is the mindset of the Europeans. They want to put boots on the ground, but I'm going to say again, all of you people that are rooting for the Ukrainians and rooting for France and Britain, you don't understand. If you're an American and you're rooting for these idiots, you basically saying that you are willing to send your sons and your daughters over to the Ukraine to die. Are you really willing to do that? Do you really know what's at stake? Now watch, now we got the main character, Zelensky. I want y'all to hear Zelensky now, because Zelensky, the energy, he's making it real plain. Hey, he fully expects U.S. citizens to die for him and his people and for the elite in Europe. He fully expects it. And but I don't want you to believe me. I want you to believe what comes out of his mouth. I'm not making this up. This is too good to be made up. This is a huge, now I want you to hear Zelensky as he talks about boots on the ground. And I want you to hear whose name he puts in his mouth.
Loses, Russia is going to enter Baltic states, NATO member states, and then the US will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending.
Oh, wait a minute. Did y'all catch that? The US gonna have to send their what? Their sons and daughters. Listen, this is the mindset. This is the game. They want us, the so-called Negro, the poor Hispanic, what they call poor whites, all the poor in America. They want us. The plan is for us to go over to Ukraine and die for the elite in Europe, that they can maintain the capitalistic, materialistic lifestyle that they have come to enjoy. Why? The Europeans are bankrupt. They've been kicked. They are a parasitic continent. Going all the way back to the captivity, or what they commonly call slavery, then colonialism, and then being kicked out by the colonists. So they feel like, hey man, how we gonna make it? They want us to die so that they can continue, or to kickstart their former existence. Watch what he says.
Their sons and daughters to war, and they will.
I'm gonna start this over
fight
because it's so profound.
exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters. Then the US will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war, and they will have to fight, because it's nature that we're talking about, and they will be dying, God forbid, because it's a horrible thing.
Did you hear this cat? He said they're gonna send us over there and we will be dying. So I want you Democratic senators, I don't know if you slow, if you bumped your head. I want you Democratic senators, if you're watching this video, I want you to rethink your position on these Ukrainians. They have an imperialistic mindset. And the Europeans, I caution you this morning. This guy right here, he wants to be the number one guy. If you let that guy in the European Union, or if you let him in NATO, he's going to attempt to take over. His mindset is he needs an army and he needs nuclear weapons to fight against Russia. He's willing. He tried to use the United States. Donald Trump saw it, said, no, we're going to stop this war and pull out. This guy is pushing the whole world, or the continent, to World War III. So when his the aid package got cut off and the intel got cut off, you start seeing him in Australia. He's trying to, now what he's trying to do is circumvent the United States and buy weapons from Germany. Germany told him no. Then he went down to Australia. We have yet to receive any information about that visit, whether or not the Australians are going to supply him. But what we're starting to see is in Europe, the European Union, the nation saying, no, we need our weapons. Why? Because this guy, Zelensky, and Big Nose Macron from France, they are whipping up the spirit of fear, a frenzy, and among the Europeans that Russia is a threat. Now I'm going to show you something else. I'm going to show you one more video before I hit you with my conclusion. And this video is probably one of the strongest videos of them all. This is from the King, Martin Luther King. Something that Martin said, was it 60, 70 years ago? It has come to pass in our generation, y'all. I want y'all to see this. We did Zelensky. We did Starmer. I didn't like the video that I had on, what's his name? But, you know, can't be perfect. But I could have been perfect. I should have been perfect. But I want y'all to see this. I want you to see what the old man said when he was alive. Dr. Martin Luther King. And he's talking about the Vietnam War. But when you hear him talking, he's going to bring up the same argument that I'm bringing up today about poor people fighting wars. Go ahead.
$53 for each person classified as poor. And much of that $53 goes for salaries to people who are not poor. So I was increasingly compelled to see the war as an enemy of the poor and attack it as such. Perhaps a more tragic recognition of reality took place when it became clear to me that the war was doing far more than devastating the hopes of the poor at home. It was sending their sons and their brothers and their husbands to fight and die in extraordinarily high proportion relative to the rest of the population. We were taking the black young men who had been crippled by society and sending them 8,000 miles away to guarantee liberties in Southeast Asia.
That's what they want to do. These Europeans, they have not changed. So they want to send the so-called Negro, the poor whites, poor Latinos, citizens of the United States, send us on the other side of an ocean, a sea, the Black Sea, and they want us to defend the so-called liberties of the European nations. Listen to the old man, because the same thing he said back in the 60s is relevant in 2025. That's why I'm using him as my conclusion.
Which they had not found in Southwest Georgia and East Harlem. So we have been repeatedly faced with the cruel irony of watching Negro and white boys on TV screens as they kill and die together.
As they kill and die together. This the plan, y'all. This is just the master plan. That's what they got planned for us. Now check this out. There was a man by the name of Charles Darwin. And Charles Darwin, and you can fact check me on this, Charles Darwin came up with this theory of survival of the fittest. And so it was called Darwinism. And this is where you go out and you look at plants and animals, and the only plants or animals that should survive are the strong. And part of the theory was you should not help the weak to survive if they're not strong enough. So the Anglo-Saxons came up with social Darwinism. They took that concept from the animal kingdom and the beast kingdom and the plants, and they applied it to mankind. And so they said any group of people that are not strong enough to live, they should die. So they looked down in the Black community and they said, hey, these Negroes are not strong. They should not be able to procreate. So then you get Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is part of social Darwinism to keep the Black community at a certain number, the population. And so they apply social Darwinism to the entire country, to the poor whites, the poor Blacks, anybody that's poor, you don't deserve to be helped. That's Darwinism, social Darwinism. And so it appears that Zelensky, because he wants to be a part of the elite amongst the Europeans, he is sacrificing the poor Ukrainians under this concept of social Darwinism. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, America had earmarked $100 million or something like that. I'm not going to even mention that because of the way it sounds. But as I conclude my lesson today, I want you to understand that these wars are a form of social Darwinism to decrease populations. It's a form of genocide. So for you Democrats who are pushing to continue this military aid and this intel to the Ukrainians to possibly thrust us into World War III, shame on you. And to the Trump administration, hey man, we want to, in the hood, amongst people that don't have a whole lot of money, that are not as educated, but just good folks, that these are the 99% that go to work every day, have homes, drive cars, have children, they just living their lives. Hey man, kudos to you, kudos to the administration. And we simply say thank you for taking into account that our lives are precious in your eyesight. And we thank you for it. And we're looking for good, better things to come from your organization, from this government, because this is a decent government. I like this government. I like what they're doing. So we want you guys to consider what was said today.